Hi, so in today's blog post I want to talk about hyperventilation in pre-season conditioning. Now I think physios and S&C coaches were actually making a fundamental mistake due to pressures from above in the terms of head coaches. So when we're doing very heavy and intense conditioning, when an athlete finishes, what they usually want to do is this. Okay, most people will subconsciously go into this position. Now what the head coach thinks is that that's mentally weak. Okay, so what they're going to do is they're going to get up, hands off your hips, no hands on hips, no hands on knees. What does the athlete do then? The athlete gets up, puts his hands on his head usually, okay, and then he goes into this position and he walks around. Okay, so I just want to explain what's happening here. When the athlete, okay, is trying to get a normal breathing pattern back, okay, he's trying to subconsciously increase the CO2 levels, okay, to balance them with the O2, okay? The O2 is not going in, it's not supplying the cells, okay, with oxygen. The CO2 isn't producing at a fast enough rate, okay, which usually corresponds, okay, with the exhalation phase. So when we inhale, our ribs are going to pop up, they're going to externally rotate, okay? When we exhale, our ribs are going to internally rotate and pop down, okay? When we inhale, our heart rate's going up and our blood pressure rises. When we exhale, okay, our heart rate goes down and our blood pressure goes down. So recovering from an intense conditioning session, what your athlete subconsciously is trying to do is he's trying to internally rotate his ribs. He's trying to go into an exhalation position to produce more CO2 to get out, okay, so that the O2 can come in and supply the cells, okay, and the tissues to recover. In this position, his heart rate's going to be down and his blood pressure is going to decrease, okay? So what do? We tell him, no, get your hands off your knees, get your hands off your hips. And they come up to this position, okay? All of a sudden now, standing up tall, my ribs are in external rotation, okay? In the inhalation phase of respiration, okay? They're going to start mouth breathing more, okay? And then basically heart rate's gone up again, okay? And blood pressure increases. So they're not recovering correctly, okay, by having them in this position. But the head coach thinks it's weak usually, which is why we'll tell them hands off knees, stand nice and tall. That's the incorrect information if we're trying to get our athletes to recover straight away after a conditioning session. The other thing that happens that the research has shown is that we feel postural instability in hyperventilation, okay? So that's why you want to put your hands on your knees, you want to put your hands on your hips. We feel unstable when our bodies are hyperventilating. That's why the athlete wants to put his hands on his head in order to gain stability. Okay, now I understand the role of the coach and he's backing down our neck. So what do we do? Well, one cue, practical cue that we can do is we can just help the ribs to go into internal rotation a little bit. Okay, so a cue I use is a bra strap, or if they're wearing a GPS vest, tell them pop the GPS vest back towards the wall behind them or away from them. That's just going to help them walk a little bit weird, okay, I'll be honest, a little bit strange, but it'll just tip their chest bone back. It'll help the ribs to internally rotate, okay, and it's helping the exhalation phase of respiration. We want exhalation because that's going to decrease the heart rate, it's going to decrease the blood pressure, okay, and it's going to allow the athlete get back to homeostasis, which is ultimately what that nervous system wants. Okay, so just think about that the next time you're telling your athletes get nice and tall. They're going to put their hands on their heads like that. They're looking up to the sky. They're driving their rib cage up. The heart rate's increasing again, because they're biasing the inhalation phase of respiration. Okay, so that's what we're mainly covering in the first four, I think it's up to, actually sorry, it's the first 10 days of the high performance program. I take you through some practical applications to improve the exhalation of the athlete. And that's why it's so important that we get that respiration right, okay? It's not a case of the rib cage being up is causing all the problems. It's subconsciously, okay? That's the position that the athlete is spending a lot of time in, okay? So we don't necessarily need to push the ribs down. We just want the ribs to be able to move fully in external rotation. We want the ribs to be able to move fully in internal rotation, okay? So it's not necessarily a case of rib position and all this that's getting a little bit misunderstood. We just want the athlete to display full external rotation, full internal rotation, and to be able to utilize that when they are going to be hyperventilating during pre-season conditioning.